St. Louis BI User Group meeting tonight. Really appreciate you coming. My name is Julie Blomquist. I'm one of the co-chairs of the SQL group. And here's Gary Polinsky. He's a co-chair of the BI User Group. Back on the table is a sign-in sheet or a check-off sheet, and then an evaluation form. You turn this in, we'll give you a raffle ticket. I've got SQL Server 2016 reporting services and mobile reports, as well as Pluralsight education certificates, where you can, one is for 90 days and the others are for 30 days. There's a takeaway sheet in the back, which has what our calendar is that's coming up. Tonight we're going to have Kathy Kellenberger talking about the SSRS 2016 mobile reports. And our dinner and meeting is being sponsored by Signature Consultants, where we have Kevin and Katie. And are you with?
This is Brian with.
Oh, you're Brian with. Okay. Well, so our meeting room, which we are thrilled with, is sponsored by Oakwood. And Microsoft is going to be moving where we have our afternoon meetings, and Oakwood has really stepped up their plate so that they'll host our afternoon meetings. So Brian.
Yeah, so Oakwood Systems, and hopefully you're familiar with Oakwood. We're a Microsoft managed partner here in St. Louis and work with Fortune 500 to the SMB space, and we obviously do a lot of work in SQL and BI reporting, analytics, and things, and that's been a huge driver for our business in recent years is in that BI space and reporting and dashboards and things like that. So Jonathan is one of our principal consultants here in St. Louis. Our office is just on the third floor. So obviously, with being as close as we are to Microsoft, I was actually just in a meeting with our EBG partner, and he was telling me about their new layout and everything there in Cortex. So as they're in transition, we appreciate the opportunity to host meetings like this, and obviously we want to sell you as much stuff as we can. So if we need resources from a project perspective, let us know. But
they do a lot of project work, and I know that I just recently saw a proposal that was sent out. Different companies bid requests for
an RFP.
RFPs, yeah, things like that. But we really appreciate you helping with the meetings, and just I think Jonathan, you're on the board too, right? Yeah. Get you guys involved.
Really easy to get to the meeting. It was hard to engineer Microsoft moving to Cortex, but
Well, we really appreciate it, and thank you again for
we're, like I said, on the project services side, or that's something I'm seeing. Partners from Signature are here.
Yeah. So I'll explain a little bit about myself. So my name is Kevin Hedlund. I've been with Signature now for about 5 years. I've been in the staffing industry for 11 years. So Katie's one of our new recruiters. She's been here for just under a year now. But so we've been here in the St. Louis market since about 2008. And the economy was going down, so we were a tier 1 vendor to Wachovia, and when Wachovia went under, Wells Fargo purchased them, obviously. So we're based out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida area. That's where we're headquartered out of. We have about 25 offices nationwide, about 2,500 billing consultants right now in the U.S., and 800 of those were with Wells Fargo. So that's kind of one of our mainstays that we have here in the area. So we have about 15 to 20 customers we work with in the area, and our main focus is going to be your contract to hire, and permanent placements with all different kinds of companies in the area. So I've done a lot of work with the SQL user group up in Iowa. I just recently relocated from our Iowa office about 10 months ago. So don't ask me what high school I went to, because you won't know that question. So newer to the St. Louis market, just trying to network, trying to get to know people. Recruiting is definitely building network and getting to know people in the local markets, and referrals and whatnot. So definitely open to conversations. Again, a lot of people say they don't want to work with recruiters because they're only going to look to try to place me in a job. That's not what we're here for. Our company was founded by an ex-doctor, an ex-surgeon. He's all about building relationships. That's our model, is a relationship model. So we really try to take it to the next level, and getting involved with events like this and being able to help out and partner and get our name out there. We're growing here in the market. We've gone through our peaks and valleys in this area so far. So part of the reason why I came down to help out. So love to help out anyway. We've got a little bit of swag. I know Katie and I are going to have to probably take off here in a little bit, so we're not going to be able to stay through the meeting, but I'll leave some of our business cards here. We'll leave some pizza here for you guys likes to eat throughout the meeting, so that way you keep some energy going. But let us know if there's anything we can do to help in any which way at all. Julie has our contact information as well.
And so if your firm's looking for people or looking to work with a recruiting company to help fill positions, or if you're in between positions, or
Yes.
you're totally dissatisfied with your position, but
As long as your boss isn't here to
Yeah.
say that.
That's true. Yeah, the big thing is, we want the companies to allow you to come to the events, especially the afternoon events. This is evening, probably on your time. So we're trying not to Peter to pay call or whatever, but certainly if you're in between positions or you're looking, give them a call. There's cards back there. And I just learned that your cup, it turns blue and it's cold blue. I thought that was pretty cool. But we appreciate them coming and helping us with the pizza dinner.
Yes, and we hope you enjoy it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Great. Great. Thank you very much.
Man, I feel like I should have said more.
We go to the next slide. So the BI user group is an afternoon meeting. It's going to be our next meeting. It's May 9th over at the 3 City Place. And it's going to be all about data science. There's going to be an overview of the data science using the Microsoft tools and environments, and a case study on how a retailer actually used it. Not showing up, but it's CG.
It's at the bottom.
CSG Solutions is going to be the lunch sponsor for that.
It's down at the bottom. I don't know.
That's okay.
Maybe from pasting into my slides.
That's all right.
Okay.
And the next, we are part of the PASS community, this Professional Association for SQL Server. It's an international organization. And here's our community news. On May 3rd to the 4th is 24 hours of PASS. It's expert training. You just sign up for it and you'll get a link, and it's around the clock. They have speakers from all around the world, and it is also recorded. The Business Analytics Day is June 21st in Atlanta. It's It's 2 days.
2 days, yeah.
One or two in-depth full day sessions.
Oh,
One of two in-depth full day sessions. Well, anyway, it's $5.95, so it's minimal risk. It's a full day of education. So, and it's all focused on the business analytics. Okay, I obviously didn't read the slides ahead of time. Microsoft Data Amp, where data goes to work. So you should get the latest on big data. So it's going to be on April 19th at 8 a.m. Pacific time. So you can register for another free online event. Virtual groups are sponsored by PASS. There's over 30 of them, and it's especially for people who don't have a physical chapter located where they are. But it's a great opportunity, even if you have a physical chapter, to pick up additional information. There's more detailed focus. There's DBA Fundamentals Architecture. Pat is one of the co-chairs of the Women in Technology SQL. So these are the meetings that are coming up. So I guess we have the April 12th ones coming up. But on the next slide, it shows you these are all the types of the virtual chapters. There's also, virtualization. There's PowerShell security. There's some that are really highly focused. There's language. You want to work on your language skills. All the virtual chapters record their presentations, so you can go to their archive pages and look for the past topics. When you attend during the lunch and learn, usually lunch and learn, we're now starting to go around the clock. I help with the DBA chapter, and we're now getting some assistance by Australia so that we can have them to service that area of the world. But we record, and you can look at past recordings. If you attend during the lunch and learn, you're able to ask questions and get answers. And the question and answers are usually recorded as well. SQL Saturdays are one-day mini conferences. These are the ones coming up, and they're again around the world. We're still trying to decide on if we're going to be able to do one in St. Louis. We did one last year in September, and we're looking for a co-chairman to do this year, or we may just do ours every 2 years. But it's a mini conference. There's, different lectures in different rooms, and it gives you a great idea of what a conference is and how that all works. The fees are nominal. It's usually like $10 to cover the lunch just in case you can't attend with the organization. But these are the ones coming up. So these are the ways that you can connect with PATS. It is a free membership, so go out and you can take your membership and associate it with the physical chapters or with the virtual chapters, and all you do is you get emails. Everything, because we follow the most restricted guidelines, which is European rules, so everything is kept very secure and no names or anything are sent out. So would you think with the other side? Is that
I think that's it. Now it's me.
So I'd like to introduce, I didn't bring my little write-up, so I don't have your biography. So, okay, Kathy Kellenberger is one of our local MVPs. We're very fortunate here in St. Louis to have 2 MVPs. It's a very select group of Microsoft certified individuals who are also voted, or it's very difficult to become an MVP.
Basically, it's like a 20-hour-a-week unpaid job.
Yes.
That's pretty much it.
We appreciate it. And on the takeaway sheet, you'll see the websites, but we also have a Yahoo group, and Kathy's one of the moderators for that. So, if you go to SQL Central or different places to post your question, you could also post a question to our Yahoo group, and usually Kathy or Dan or one of the individuals. Sometimes you can get a quicker answer, sometimes not, but they're always right. Oh, I
Dan answers. If Dan answers the question.
Just in case I need to make any notes.
Oh. All right, so I'm Kathy, and part of the reason for this class is that I've been an SSRS, SQL Server Reporting Services fan, since it was the first edition of it, or the first version of it was in beta. When I heard about it in 2003 at the PASS Summit, I went back to work and immediately deployed it while it was still in beta and started using it right away. So I've always been a really big fan of it. The problem is Microsoft has a tendency to have this product that people use, and all of a sudden one day you get the information that they're not going to support it anymore. It's gone. Some of you have probably had that happen with some things that you use. I still have a Windows phone that I'm hoping continues to work for at least a few more months. So I was really thrilled whenever SQL Server 2016 came out, because I was one of the people that was sure that they were going to start announcing that reporting services was deprecated, because now we've got Power BI, we've got all kinds of business intelligence products out there. Why do we need reporting services? So I was really thrilled with 2016, because not only did they not announce that it was going away, they've actually invested in it. They've actually put some money into it and some work into it and added some new features, one of which is mobile reports, which I'm going to talk about today. I do have a book. I think it's the first one on the left over there. I gave some away at the last meeting that I spoke at. I didn't bring any tonight. But just talking about Reporting Services 2016, that book will start you from the beginning if you've never used it, and covers all the new features of 2016. So the mobile report feature, I've got one nice little chapter in there, and it was so interesting to me, I thought, hey, why not create a Pluralsight course on it? So I also, as soon as that book was done, I started on a Pluralsight course specifically on mobile reports. And I have not had the pleasure of working with it in a production situation. I haven't had any customers come to me and ask me to actually build it. So I was trying to figure all this stuff out. And what was really fun while I was writing the book and doing the class is that things were changing on a monthly basis. I started the book whenever 2016 was in one of the CTPs or betas, and things wouldn't work. You know, I'm reporting things, I'm communicating with the team, I'm going back and forth. And so once I started on the mobile reports class on Pluralsight, you know, we were past the beta stages. SQL Server was released, but the problem was there were still bugs, there were still issues. There's buttons that don't do anything. And I've gotten verification from Microsoft. Oh yeah, we got to hide that button at some point. You know, really crazy. So then Service Pack 1 comes out in the late fall for 2016. Now all of a sudden, there's some new functionality that we used to have. Now it's back. I'm like, now I got to go. What do I do with my class? I'm almost done with it. You know, and then there were some other bugs and issues, and then they released a cumulative update 1. So if you want to work with this, make sure that you get Service Pack 1 and Cumulative Update 1. Both of those fit to get the latest and greatest features and bug fixes for this. And just to celebrate that I have this class, I did bring, we're going to give away tonight 1 90-day subscription for Pluralsight. And there's one other thing, and I should have told Julie to announce, but I totally forgot. There's a conference, I believe it's May 2nd. It's by the Days of .NET group. The .NET group in town is called St. Louis Silver Linings, and it's going to all be about data and cloud. So I will be speaking at that, and it's not a free one like a lot of our SQL ones. It's actually I think about $150 to go to, but that group puts on a heck of a conference. So if you're interested in all, it's well worth it. All right, so I told you my little saga about how fun it was writing the book and creating the course. But the other thing I found out whenever I started digging into these mobile reports was all the demos that I had seen made it look so easy. You know, made it, oh, drag this, drag that, drag that. They didn't really go into the complexity of all these controls. So I'm going to cover some of that complexity tonight. My course, I think, is about 2.5 hours long. So if you're really interested, we've got at least even one month things. Go out and watch that course if you really want to dig into every single control and every single button and drop down box on that control. I cover all of it. I go in really in depth. All right, so one thing that we can do is that you can actually, if you have a device with you, which is like an Apple, which it has to be iOS 9 and up, or an Android 4.4 and up, you can actually connect to my virtual machine and look at the dashboard. We have a username and password, and hopefully I've got everything, and I have a little, this is what's ironic, my Windows phone will not actually even work with this. So you've got to download, because Verizon has never pushed out Windows 10, unless I want to go rogue and do it the developer way, which I'm not going to. So my Windows phone doesn't even do it. If you have a Windows phone, which I'm probably the only person in the room, you have to have Windows 10. But go out, you have to install Power BI from your app store, and then those are the credentials. So has everybody got that? We can always go back to it if we need to. All right. So one of the things that's really interesting, I'm going to cover really quickly some of the 2016 features. So they were not kidding. They completely started over from scratch on what we used to call Report Manager. All right. So how many of you are using reporting services today? About half. Are you using Report Manager or are you using SharePoint? Who's using Report Manager? And then some are using SharePoint? Yeah. Okay. So here's the cool thing. Normally, new features in the past few releases have gone to SharePoint. This will actually not work. Mobile reports will not work in SharePoint. It only works in this new web portal. They have started from scratch. For those of you that are using Report Manager today, you probably have some complaints about it. You probably get people that complain that it doesn't work on their favorite browser, right? Or maybe the report works on their favorite browser, but they can't print because it uses an old ActiveX control. So, or it requires Silverlight. Well, guess what? This is HTML5. So it's going to work on any browser. Yeah. So that's a really cool thing. The other cool thing, notice that you've got different sections. That's another design thing. You've got KPIs and mobile reports that I'll talk about, and paginated reports. So paginated reports are what we're going to call your traditional SSRS reports. They could be just a tabular report, or they could be like a dashboard. Anything that you think of traditionally as reporting services, they're going to now call paginated reports. One thing I don't have a slide on is they're going to this is going to coordinate very well with Power BI, where you will, at some point, you'll be able to upload Power BI in reporting services, and they'll actually run. I think now you can upload them, but they don't run. At some point, they'll actually run, for those of you who like that.
Yeah.
Yes?
Can I ask you to go
Yeah.
back one slide? I'll write down the login information, and I'll pass it over.
Okay. You can do that. This will not work after this meeting because this is in Azure and I can't afford to have my VM running all the time. So it will work tonight, and it might periodically work, but it's not going to work all the time.
I have one question.
Yes.
The new portal is still based on SharePoint, or
No.
no?
No. So that's one of the cool things. The question was the new web portal, is it based in SharePoint? No. It's actually just similar to the old Report Manager. It's just a standalone website. So it's very surprising. I think Microsoft is starting to get away from SharePoint after them pushing it and people, yeah. On Facebook today, I had one of those time things. A couple of years ago, I had a post about, it said something like, my sister says never say anything bad, just say positive things on Facebook. So I'm not going to mention SharePoint today. You know? So I must have been fighting with it back then.
So I think tonight you're just going to be doing the Power BI for the portal.
I'm not going to really be doing Power BI per se. It's mobile reports, but they run on Power BI on your handheld.
Okay.
So I'm not really be doing Power BI.
Well, my next question would be, even though you're doing this on the portal, this is still applied to on-prem.
Yes.
Okay.
The reason I'm doing it in an Azure VM is so that you guys can connect to it.
Okay,
And I didn't have to worry about trying to figure out IP addresses and things like that.
because I was worried about Power BI being different. there.
Well, this is not Power BI per se, but the Power BI app on your phone will work. So it looks a lot different. The biggest thing is the browser support. Here's something cool. You can create these little JSON files, and you can have custom branding on your web portal with your company logo. This particular one is a sample that Microsoft made available so you can learn how to do it. It's basically little JSON files. So not a big deal. Yeah, XML's no fun anymore. There's a new favorites page, so you can click on any report that you love and say, I don't want to dig in to get all my report as an executive. You know, I don't want to dig in. I just want this one page. So you have this custom favorites page. So you can you make a copy of the report not really a copy. It just shows up. Okay, so that's another cool thing. This is really kind of crazy. So they changed how all the charts and gauges look. This is the default gauge. If I just grab the first gauge and drag it to my reporting services, when I'm working on a report, that's what it looks like. This is what the new one looks like. So they look very, very different. And they wanted it to make it look more like the Power BI. Supposedly this is more modern. So previously modern was look 3D. Now modern is flat. So let's see. Okay, here is a couple of new chart types that they have. And again, these are still the paginated reports. One is a sunburst and one of them is a tree map. And here's something really cool. Anybody ever try to get your parameter, really aggravated that you can't control your parameter placement on your reporting services? I don't know if you can, how well you can see it on there, but you've got 4 going across, and I moved one. Now I've got 3 across and 1 underneath. So you can change how your parameters go. Again, this is still the paginated reports. So any questions? There's even more features than that, but those are the ones that I thought looked cool on the slides. Those are the ones I picked. Any questions about the other features? Nope. Okay. All right, and again, only about half of you have been using reporting services. So what are mobile reports? There really are 2 things. I think most people just think of the second, just the dashboards. They're these little standalone KPIs that basically you just see it. You launch reporting services and you just see this little KPI. Okay, they're little standalone reports and these dashboards. So you should be able to, if you've logged in, you should be able to see both of those in your handheld now. I should have some out there on both. They run in the web portal. They do not run in SharePoint. So if you have SharePoint, not if you put the native mode inside of SharePoint. If you're actually running SharePoint integrated mode, you will not get these. Also, I don't know if I've got a bullet point, it is Enterprise Edition. They also run on handheld devices. You've got to have at least iOS 9, Android 4.4, or Windows 10. And if you've heard of DataZen before, Microsoft bought DataZen a couple of years ago, and that's where these came from. And so here's another really cool thing. I was going back to DataZen documentation to try to figure some of this stuff out. The documentation, it just takes I don't know, it seems like it takes Microsoft a while to get everything documented. So that's some other things. Another interesting thing about that is these require shared data sets. Okay, so your data set has got to be published. They're not inside, so for example, your normal paginated reports, usually you'll have the data set embedded. The data set is the query. You'll have it embedded in the report. These actually have to use shared data sets or published data sets. We have some new development tools to work with these. On the left, you really can't tell here, but to create a KPI, there's no tool to download. You just go into reporting service and say, I want to add a new KPI. And inside the web portal is where you edit these, which is really different than anything before. Because previously, we've always had to work in Report Builder or bids or SSDT and then push that report out or upload it. So with this KPI, you have a tool just built into the web portal. The tool on the right is called Mobile Report Publisher, and that's a free download. Anybody can download it. It looks almost identical to the DataZen tool. So if you've used DataZen, anybody in here use DataZen? No one at all? Okay. I had never either. So, so that's the new tool. So it's not SSDT or bids, it's this new Mobile Report Publisher. All right, so this is what a KPI looks like. I can have 3 different things. Well, for one thing, I see it without clicking on it. I don't have to click it at all. I bring up my page, I automatically see that. I can have a number, so that's that big number. That's your minimum that you're gonna have is just a number. It's, just like any other KPI you might have in a report. I can also have a comparison. I'm not going to show, but like a quota. How does it compare to a quota? So I don't really see the 2 numbers. I just see, like in this case, that plus 4%. I can also see a trend. So if these are the sales for a particular year, I can have a trend line, that little graph, that little chart over on the side, where I'm show all the totals for the months. I can't mouse over it to see the values, but I can just see that visual. And I can also link it to another report. I could click it and it could go to a mobile report per se, or it could even go to a paginated report, or even somewhere out on the web. So I can click it and it can go, you can see something else. Unfortunately, in the Power BI, the only thing that really works is going to another mobile report. It doesn't really work to go to a paginated report. As I mentioned, you have to have the published data sets. Here's something that I had never heard of. As many different sessions as I watched and researched, these do not refresh. It's really crazy. You have the KPI out there and the data changes, you would expect that the KPI would change, right? No, you have to have a scheduled data refresh, kind of like a subscription. And nobody really talks about that. It's a secret. All right.
Feel like how, as far as this is, I call a job, or is that?
It's the same way. So the question is it like an SSRS subscription where it creates a job with that GUID name? Yes, that's exactly what happens. Yeah. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at KPIs and how to create them. Cancel out of that. I wanted to make sure we were warmed up here. Okay, so here's my screen. Hopefully you can actually see some of these, see this mobile report and these KPIs on your phone. So what I'm gonna do is just click this plus button and say new KPI. And here's the screen. I can add a name. Let's just call it STL KPI. And notice that I already have numbers. It's already kind of filled out. And one thing I forgot to mention, we can have, I forgot to mention the status, that you can have a status that makes it turn different colors. So, the cool thing about mobile reports and the mobile report dashboards and KPIs is that you automatically get this sample data, and that can really help you figure out which data types you need. In some cases, the data type is really, really important. So what I could do, if I would not personally do it, go in every day and manually modify these numbers. I could keep it set to some, just some manually entered numbers. I would do that about 2 times before I would have to make sure it was automated in some way. I think my rule back when I was a DBA was 3 times. Somebody asked me to do something 3 times and I automate it. But just going in and typing something, that would be really, really aggravating. So what you can do is go in and choose data set field. And then once you do that, you can pick, it'll launch out to SSRS, and you can go find your data set that you're interested in. And you can choose, you have to have an aggregation, because remember, we just want one number to show up. So in this case, I'm going to choose sum, and I'm going to choose total sales, and click OK. So now it's going to pull that number directly from SQL Server, or wherever my data set is. You can have a lot of different data sets pointing to other places. I like all my data in SQL Server. I'm kind of particular about that. And there's different, I could have currency, different, in this case, that number's pretty big, so that's probably what I want to do. So that's my value. Now I can have a goal as well. I can either set it manually, or I can choose a data set field as well. If I do that, then I'm going to get that little % change. So let me go ahead and go out. In this case, I'm going to go to the same data set. I could go to another one. I'm going to choose sum and target sales. And so now I've got a little plus 4% there. I can have a status. Status can be -1, 0, or 1. It can only be, again, one column or one piece of information. I'm going to go ahead and go out to my same data set. And I believe what I did on this particular data set is came up for one status for the entire query and then just populated that on every row is how I did that. So I'm just going to say first. I don't want to add them together. I could have first, min or max or average. Some would be the wrong thing. All right, so now I've got my status, which it's happy, it likes that. And then I have my trend set. So my trend set could be several different numbers that are related somehow to the other data. So I'm going to go back out, in this case, to the same data set. Again, you don't have to have the same, whoops, wrong one. Same data set. In this case, I do have it. So data is filtered only for 2013, and I have one row per month. Again, I'm going to choose total sales, and I had to make sure in my query that I had an order by. Really important. Make sure that I had an order by so that the months do show up correctly. And so now when I do that, I have I can't mouse over to see the value, but at least I can visually see the trend. The other thing that I can do is I could choose a different visualization for my trend set. You know, whatever I want to do here. I can like this one. And one more thing that I can change is the related content. I could link to a mobile report or a custom URL. A custom URL could be anything on the internet. It could be another report. That will work inside the web portal, but a custom URL, I haven't seen it work on a device if you're using the Power BI app. So let me go ahead and click that. And then here's a mobile report. Click OK.
Kathy, is that like linking it to maybe a detail report?
It could be a detail report. In this case, I'm linking it to another dashboard. If I linked it, and when I think of detail, I think of a tabular report. That would work inside the web portal. It would not work inside your Power BI app. So unless they've changed it and I haven't tested it, which could be. This has been a moving target. So I'm going to click Create. And I believe it will just put it wherever I was when I launched, you know, saying that I wanted to create it. So, okay, so there it is, right there. So once I've created it, I can click on it and it'll make it larger so I can see the numbers better. And here's my related content that I can go ahead and click to. I can add to favorites. Let's see. I also have this little ellipsis right here that gives me the menu if I don't want to click it. I can add it to my favorites. I can move it, delete it, or manage it. If managing it will open up the designer again. Okay. So there's one more thing I want to show you about these KPIs is that's the refresh problem. Again, nobody's talking about them. There's another person, one of my friends actually that I used to work with, sort of. Oh yeah, we both worked at Pragmatic Works. He created a new course on Pluralsight on all the new features of SSRS, and he has a little section on mobile reports. He doesn't mention this either, so nobody's talking about this, but you have to actually set up that schedule. So I'll show you that. So I have my refresh test. It is showing a 6 right now. So let me go ahead and click Manage. And my data set is refresh test, column 1. So if I look at that data, we can see the data. So what I'm going to do is bring up, this is really slow. I don't know if it's the connection or what the problem is. Everything's slow. Okay, so I want to bring up, there we go, SQL Server. And I forgot to get this guy launched before we started. So what I want to do is I want to add some rows to that table and show you that no matter what I do, I cannot get that data to update, that KPI to update. Am I going really slow? Or what time did we get started? Okay.
I've got a question while we're waiting.
Yeah.
When you were picking the goal on the screen, I'm imagining you could point to the 2012 data set.
Mhm.
Did you say, I want this year's goal to be 20% higher than
Right.
what we did by month?
Right. So the question is, what I could have done on the previous for the goal, I could have pointed to the 2012 data and like added 20% or whatever. And that's exactly what I did do. However, I did it in one query. So I did do that. But yeah, you could have it go. So one of the examples I have in my class is I showed how to write one query that could be used for everything. And then I also talk about how to do it in 3 different queries. So I have both examples in my class. All right, so let's say,
That's in the foresight class too.
yes. So let me just switch to, so I've got refresh test, and it's just got those numbers. I'm just gonna go ahead and insert a couple of rows. Okay, so now we've got more data in there. Obviously, the KPI should change. However, let me just do this. If I click refresh test and just look at it, now we can see those new numbers showing up. I'm going to click cancel here so it doesn't change this and go back out. So there's my refresh test. If I refresh the page, it still says 6. You know, I could even shut reporting services down. It will still say 6. The reason for that is that all of these KPIs show up without you clicking on them to run them. And they thought about, you know, 1,000 people and all these KPIs just refreshing all the time, whether people wanted to see them or not. So that's the reasoning behind it. However, to get around this, what you have to do is go into your data set and go to caching, cache copy. So this is like you might want to cache a report that you know is not going to change. You don't want 1,000 people hitting that report. So you cache the report and you apply that, and then you set up a schedule. Error has, I'm not going to go in there because it's going to take too much time. I did not go through this. If I have a subscription, you've got to have the credentials stored in the data set, and I forgot to do that. But anyway, it will work. Once you set up the refresh plan, then it will refresh every day, or however, like if you have it set once a day, it will refresh once a day. Okay, so I'm going to skip that just because in the space of time, just so you know it. I don't want that thing. Let's see, go there. Okay, let me get back to the slides and talk about mobile reports. Right, so the mobile reports are really, really cool. If I was starting someplace and they were going to be building dashboards with reporting services, I would definitely say this is the way to go over at building dashboards in the old-fashioned way and the paginated. I really go, if that's a tool. If they aren't doing Power BI or whatever. One of the things that you've got is navigators, which can be like little drop-down boxes to help you filter. The way that the navigators work by default is all the data comes into the report, and the navigators just kind of filter it without going back to SQL Server. So that's how they work by default. They work more like slicers. If you've worked in Excel, where you put slicers in, all the data is there, but it filters it within the tool. So the data is all there. The slicer is just going to change it inside the report. And they're called navigators. We have charts. We've got lots and lots of types of different charts, and every one is configured differently. No two are exactly the same. This is really different from traditional reporting services. Traditional reporting services, except for the 2 new chart types, you had all these different chart types, but you pretty much configured them the same way. You know, just the look and feel was different. These charts, and in fact, I'm showing this chart, I'm showing this chart, plus a tree map chart. I'm not showing a lot of the traditional charts there, but every chart has a different purpose. So previously, you kind of picked the chart by how it looked. In mobile reports, you pick the chart by the functionality. Am I going to have a series based on time, you know, like yearly? Then there's one type of chart. Am I going to have categories? That's a different type of chart. Kind of weird, but that's how it works. Gauges. I don't know about you. I have not done a ton of dashboards in reporting services. I've worked with reporting services a lot, but mostly it's just been the tabular type reports. Every time I need to show, you know, work with a gauge in reporting services, I have to get a book out and figure out how to do it again. To me, it's so hard to work with those gauges. Now, if you work with them on a daily basis, it's a piece of cake. Again, the gauges are all the same, but they look different. You have some that are like thermometers, and some of them are like this. And the thing with mobile reports is the gauges are all really easy, super simple to configure compared to paginated. So I was really happy about that. There's only two types of gauges basically, except for the look and feel. One that just shows a number and one that shows a number in a comparison. The gauges are really a lot like KPIs. It's just they have different look and feel, and you can put them inside the mobile report. You also have maps. I found maps in reporting services to be difficult to work with unless you do it a lot. Maps in this are really, really easy. It's easy to create custom maps as well. And I'll show you an example of that when we get to it. And you also have grids, so you can have the tabular information as well. You know, and inside, I should have picked a better example there. You can have little KPIs inside your grids and little trend lines inside your grids as well, which is pretty cool. So I really, really love this. It's just every time I see a demo of it, they make it look like super easy. I guess that's the way all demos are. So I'm more truthful. It's going to take you a little bit. The tree map control, I probably spent a day trying to figure that guy out in here. This tree map is really, really complex. And, you know, I really spent a lot of time, and it was like, the documentation, fill out the properties. Okay. Basically, that was it. There was no help anywhere in the individual properties. I just had to experiment. Luckily, I did have a guy, Chris Finlund, on the reporting services team would occasionally answer my emails. Sometimes it would take a couple weeks, but I was getting some help. 3 different layouts. This is the default layout. You will only see this layout in the web portal. It's called the master layout. You also have a tablet layout. So what you have to do is configure the master layout first, and then switch it to the tablet layout, and then you can make the tablet layout a subset of the master layout's control. So if you don't put it on the master layout, it won't go on the tablet. The other really cool thing about this, let's say you have less space. You can use the same control. The control won't look weird. It will actually change how it looks in some cases. It's pretty cool. And of course, you have a phone layout as well. So hopefully that report, I didn't even think about that report that I had out there, I hope I had all the layouts configured. If not, you may not have seen much. So, all right, let's go ahead and I only have one more slide, which is some resources. So let's go ahead and do more demos. Where? I'm not getting let's see. Nope. I'm not getting there we go. I need to switch that so it's not doing that. There's a reason it's doing that. Because I'm using this virtual machine to record another Pluralsight course, and you have to hide your taskbars. And otherwise, I don't like to do that. Okay, so let's go back out and go home. And I'll just walk you through creating a mobile report. I can click here and say mobile report. I can also download the tool and just have it down here. So this is also the mobile report publisher down here. So I always get this little warning. I don't see how to make that never come up again. And again, all of the data is, you have simulated data, which makes it really easy to figure out kind of what you're doing, what your data needs to look like. Here's another weird thing. I thought this was a bug. When I publish the report and I look at the web portal, it will only show simulated data. It won't show the real data. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I would rather they just say, give the name of it. You know, I'm afraid somebody would think that was the real data and think things were terribly wrong in their company all of a sudden. Microsoft said that that was a security feature. That's what they told me. So I don't know. All right, so to get started, you know, it's really easy to just pull like the navigators, and you can just, you know, fill these grids. You can change the grid size if you want. Let me just go ahead and pull some things over, you know, and just size them. So if I just make that one little, notice how it changed. I just put it in one little square, it looks a lot different than if I give it more room. So these are pretty interesting in how they work. You know, they'll change depending on how much room they've got. So they did a really good job on that. This one I'm disappointed in. It looks like a glass of water. That would be so cool. But when I bring it over, it just turns into a cylinder. You know, I hate that. You know, remember I said there was, you know, a chart. There's charts, there's time chart and comparison time chart. So there's chart, if I just have one series, I use, and it's based on time, I use the time chart. If I am comparing two things based on time, I use the comparison time chart. So it's by the purpose more so than just the look of it. You know, we've got the maps. You know, whatever I want to do here. Sometimes it's hard to drag. Okay, I can't get it to go over. All right, but anyway, I can preview the report, and there's a lot of functionality built right in. Again, I'm looking at simulated data. I can lay out my report without ever worrying about what the data sets are. It's the opposite of working with reporting services where you've got to get all your data set up first. If I, you know, choose an item, everything's going to change. I can click on, I'll see, that one didn't work. Okay, here we go. I click on Illinois, I can get that number, Illinois. There's also a way, I know there's, okay, you click on it, you can make that one thing take up the whole screen if you want. Oops, go back. So clicking on the charts does not filter, but it does give you information. Okay, so laying it out is really, really easy. If I want to switch to the tablet, now I have this, instead of having everything to work with, I just have the controls that were on the original mobile report. Okay, so however I want it to look. I don't have to use all of them. And then there's the phone. Let's just, you know, whatever, however I want it to work. So when I preview that, that's what the phone would look like. And again, I have the functionality. So they are pretty cool. All right. Let's talk about, how much time do I have, Julie? 7:30? Okay. Okay. I get more demos on here that I can actually go through. So let's talk about the navigators, because what I really want to do is not just give you a flashy demo that says, oh, look how cool this is. Boom, 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 we're done. You know, I want to show you the real world, a little piece of the real world, okay? So I'm going to go back and just get rid of some things here. Actually, maybe I should publish this one. I publish it, I just hit save, and it evidently just it just went out there and published. I should have done save as probably. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of a lot of things here. So how do we connect it to real data? There's two ways. We can connect it to Excel spreadsheets, and I believe you would just upload, you'd have to manually do that every time you want to change it. I would do that one day. And maybe I wouldn't even do it one day. I'd say, no, where'd this data come from? So the way you do it is you go over to this data tab, and obviously there's some properties down here on each item, you know, like allow, select all. There's some other cool things with it, but I'm gonna not go into all those, or else we'll be here for 2.5 hours. All right, so once I get over on the data page, I can switch back and forth between two items, and I see my simulated data, simulated filter table and simulated table. So what I probably want to do is just go ahead and click add data, and again I need published data sets, and let me go ahead and add this one right here. So now I have that data set here, and one of them just disappeared. I don't need it anymore, I guess. And I can take my navigator and switch it to that correct data set. And I don't have a lot of screen room here, but let's see, does it have which navigator? It should be. Okay, so I'm going to filter it by order year. Is what I'm going to do here. So I can filter, you know, it's a key and a label. So key is what SQL Server needs to know. Label is what the end user is going to see. Just similar to in reporting services where you have also a key and a label as well. And over here, I just say, what would I like to use this filter for? I'd like to filter the same data set. So I go ahead and click that. So that guy's fixed. So if I click on the gauge, this particular gauge is just only has a number. This is the only gauge that's different. I'm going to go ahead and switch it to sales by years and category, and then pick which item. And only the items that you can add up are going to, numbers are going to show. If it was a date, it wouldn't show. So I'm going to go ahead and choose product sales, and then I can click options here. And I say, yes, I do want it filtered by that selection list, and I can choose which aggregation I would like. Okay, so now we have our report, and it works. I could also, that'd be on the layout. On the layout, I can change my format of my number. I can add a drill through. So even on the mobile reports, I can drill through to other things. Okay, so that's a simple navigator. The navigators have some other fancy properties. I showed you the simplest one. There's also one that you can add KPIs to. So it's kind of crazy. Let me see if it shows up. I think it's in there by default. Oh, that one doesn't have the KPI. So let's show icons. I think I got to go over to data and add score. Let's run it now and see how it works. Oh, it's not showing up because I probably did not give it the value that it needed. Not sure why that's not showing up. Should be having a little KPI there. I am not seeing it. Not going to worry about that. But it is, you can kind of see the icon shows all those little options. I think I have all the updates, but maybe I don't. Here's another one that's really kind of cool. It's a time navigator. Notice that it's even though it's a navigator that you can use to filter, you have data here. You have data that you can look at. My demo is dying. Why? I wonder if it's because, let me just start over with a new one. I wonder if it's because it's missing the data set that is needed. I see numbers here. Why am I not seeing numbers when I run it? It could be that it doesn't have its data set. Let's look. It does. It does have its data, so I'm not really sure what's happening there. Notice that when I look at the simulated data, it's got a little clock. It identifies what your data, your date column is. It identifies text as categories or filters. I hate it when it was working perfectly last night and tonight it decides to die. I am not sure what's going on there. All right, so that's really the navigators. You can use them to filter. It's also possible to use them in another way that's kind of complex to work against a filtered data set, a data set that has a filter on it or a parameter on it. It's possible to do that as well. Again, probably take a while to go through, so I'm going to skip it. You can also have one navigator depend on another one. So any of those that I talked about, anybody like, man, I really want to see one navigator depend on another one, or the parameterized data set, anybody like, God, I have to see that. Okay, good. I'm going to skip it then. Let's take a look at, let's see, these are drill through, just the gauges, how easy they are. So notice we have a whole bunch of gauges. This first one, it just shows a number. The other ones show either, they show the number, they can show the percent, against the value. They just look different. They're all, except for this guy, they're all configured the same way. So if I throw this one in here and go over to data, I have two values I've got to configure, the main value and the comparison. So the main value is going to show the number. The comparison is going to, show percent. It's not going to show the real thing. So I can choose the same data set or a different one. So I'm going to switch to, let's see, what I like to do. Grids. Oh, I have data set names on here, but I don't have it. Let me just go ahead and choose this because I believe, does this have, I could do that even though this data doesn't make sense. I'm going to go ahead and notice this, how it's got order year as a numeric value, as like money. That's another gotcha with this. If you want to add a category chart, a chart where we're comparing categories like product categories or territories, and you have a number for that value that you're filtering on, you have to cast it to like a varchar or an invarchar. You have to cast it because otherwise it won't let you filter on it. It won't let you filter on numbers. That is a really weird thing. Nobody talks about that. But I discovered it after I couldn't get my things to work. So let me just go ahead and say, let's just compare, let's see, we'll switch this over to sales by year and category. I'm just going to choose order year and order month, just to show something. So we can see so comparing order year to order month, it's really a big percent there. But that's how easy those are to do. On the layout, there's very few things you've got to change. Give it a number, obviously. You can change the number format. You can say which direction. Are higher numbers better or lower numbers better? Okay. The accent has something to do with changing the colors, which I played around with, and I'm like, why? You can drill through. You can set ranges of what you would like the colors. So you can have custom. Like I really want it to be green only if we're 20% better. Something like that. You can do custom ranges. So it's really easy. These gauges are super easy compared to the gauges in regular reporting services. So any questions about gauges? Okay. Yeah. The drill through target, either a mobile report or a custom URL. So if I click mobile report, I need to go up higher. And so now it should go to that. If I publish it, now if you click on it, it'll go to that other report. So, or you could have it go to a regular reporting services paginated report if you wanted to. So, but yeah, the charts or the gauges are super simple. And I know in regular reporting services, they're really, really difficult. The charts, like I mentioned, they are, what you do with them is it depends on the purpose, which one you choose. So for example, in regular reporting services, I could easily change a chart to a pie chart, bar chart to a pie chart. Here, you've got to start with the one you want first. You can't switch chart types on the fly, in design view. If I'm going to be filtering on time, I've got to choose a time chart. If I'm going to filter on a category or something text, or even numeric, but I'm going to have to cast it to text, I'll choose category. And then these other totals, the comparison and the pie chart are all really kind of like category charts, except they just look different, And there's a few properties in there that you can change. Let me get rid of some things here. There's a few properties you can change, like on the category chart. I can come in here and, let's see, change the visualization. I have a few choices. And is it not working? There we go. That one changed. There we go. Here's another thing that is kind of buggy about this. Like I said, there are some buttons that don't do anything. And there also are some choices that are the same as other choices. So that was what I was running into here. There's two of them that do the same, that look the same, And it's just that Microsoft hasn't cleaned a lot of this stuff up. And I got it directly from the guy. Like here, adjust Y range to values. Sometimes it works. See, it's not doing anything. What it should do is change it so that it doesn't start with 0. It starts like with a number. I have seen it work on a couple of the charts, but it doesn't work on all of them. I can show legend, so there's a few properties that you can change, but not a ton that you can change. Again, you kind of decide the purpose first before you bring one over. Every single chart has a different set of properties. There are no two charts that are identical. It's really crazy. So if I look at my category chart, notice that maybe I would like to have, like in this case, let's see, sales by year, and we'll switch it to sales by year and category. I can make the series category or subcategory, but I can't make it order year. The only way I can do that is if I cast it in the query to make it order year. So, and I do have a data set that does that. So let me go ahead and grab that. I do not know why. I don't know if that was something that was like, so now I've got this, notice that little filter symbol. I can use it as a filter because I cast it in that particular query. I don't know if that's just how DataZen did it and Microsoft didn't change it or why, you know. So now if I change it to this one, now I've got order year as a possible series name. So, and then what I want to measure is sales, you know. So they're tricky to work with. The charts are really tricky. I think once you're using them a lot, then it would be second nature. But I really believe that a lot of the I mean, I know every single demo, everything I've read, everything I've looked at, just made, oh yeah, you're done. No, you're gonna be spending some time figuring this out. Let's see what else is, oh, let me show you the tree map. Now this is the one that I spent probably a day trying to figure out. And it looks just like the new tree map in the paginated reports, but it's got all these properties. I had a really cool set of slides in my Pluralsight course where I turn these little things off and on one at a time and show the difference. So everything I change here, the data page is going to change. So if I look at this, I've got a certain set of properties. If I come in here and change like this, you know, now I'll have I don't know if you can really see it. We would have had to, well, it does look different because before I had one over on the right edge. Now I don't have it. I only have 4. So everything you change here, the data properties change. It took me a long time to figure out what all these things mean, and there's no documentation. So what does 2-level tree map mean? Okay, if it's on, then I have multiple boxes. And inside my boxes, I have little areas, I'm going to say, category areas. Okay, if I turn that off, now I just have the category areas. Okay, so it's basically a way to aggregate at 2 different levels. I believe this one doesn't do any, oh, it does do. Okay, I can't remember what that one did. Input data aggregation. Okay, I think this one, I think if it's off, you get 1 area per row, and when you turn it on, you get 1 area per whatever the category is. You know, again, it's going to look different. The data properties are going to be different. Now I got a bunch more. I got 2, 4, 6 instead of 4 or 5. Everything is different. Let's see, heat map with custom center value. Took me a long time to figure that one out. Basically what that means is it takes an average for the category and then compares it. So let me turn, I think you got to have that one on, that one off. And so instead of just kind of like notice this is good and this is bad, this one actually compares it to the average value. So now it looks different. So depending on if you just want to see an overall color change or if you want each little one to compare to the average of that. So this is so complex, and it's very different than the one, like I said, there's a new tree map control in traditional, or in the new reporting services, traditional paginated, but it's configured completely different than this one. This is really, really different. So I spent a good day figuring this stuff out. I think it's worth it. I mean, I don't know. I kind of don't see as much value in this report just because everything ends up so little, you know. maybe it's good, maybe it's not. It seems to me like if I don't if somebody can't understand something in a couple seconds, is it that valuable? I don't know. Okay, let me show you. Now this is super cool. We have the maps. All right, again, you get simulated data. So the way that the simulated data works is that you've got to have at least, so you've got to have a map key, and that's internal to map and your data. So if I bring some real data, it's got to be these state names. It cannot be like a state abbreviation or city names or anything. It's got to match. So when I bring this up, this is going to show me what I have to match. Okay. And it's super easy to configure. If I'm looking at the data page, I basically have a key. What about my data is going to match up to the data that, the simulated data, and what value am I going to pull in? Those two properties. On the layout, I can choose the currency. I can choose a different map. There's a few different maps. Change the values in a drill through. There's not much to configure. Anybody use the maps and reporting services? There's all those layers, and it's really complex. Here's the cool thing. I love this. Now, I do not have the talent to work with spatial data, but if you do have it, you can do some cool things. You can, and these are downloads. You can add a custom map, and they have some sample custom maps that you can download. And they come with, each one comes with two files, a DBF, which I believe is your simulated data, and the SHP file. I am not, good with spatial data. So I'm not going to create these, but I was able to grab these from Microsoft. And I've got the link, a link to the reporting services custom logos and everything, that, and also these shapes. So there we go. So I saw something, this is an airplane. Let me change it to something else. But I saw the whole joke today about how the back of it is now Fight Club, So it's not really funny, but so then if I wanted to work with this one, then what I would do is go to the data and simulated custom map, and I would see that my map key is like 10A, 10B, those are airline seats, right? So whatever my data, I got to make sure that matches, then I match that up. All right, so let's change it to, oops. Let's see, let's do the stadium. That one's kind of cool. So just grab both files, there's the stadium. So you could come up with if you have the talent, you could come up with your own custom maps. Pretty neat.
Could I do cities?
Yes.
in North America?
Yes, you could do anything if you can, and they've got information on how to do it, go out there. I don't know how to do it, but you definitely could do cities, zip codes.
Microsoft must know how to do it, because I grabbed that in SharePoint. Then I show, like, if we have 3 problems in Chicago, 2 here.
Mm-hmm.
They can click on that, and then I can bring it to the ugly details.
Right. Right. So yeah, you could do cities. The only thing you've got to do is you have a sample data file, and you've got inside that's going to you'll have a key, your map key, and then whatever your real data is, it's just got to match up to that map key. So it's you could definitely do that. Create a city. You also have data grids, and this will probably not work since that other one didn't work, but you can have data grids that can either just show data, or you could also show trend lines. And we'll see if it works. So I've got my, let's see, aggregate by time, aggregate by field. If I go into data, add a gauge column. And it's all set up, so theoretically it should work. And it's not working at all. So I did run into this once in a while where my report, I would get this weird thing, but then when I publish it, it'd be okay. Let me just go ahead and publish it. Here's the report. Still doing it there too. Not good. I am not sure it's because I added and subtracted so many things, but I had no problem with it over the weekend when I was putting these demos together. Oh, I hate that. It could be that I just played with it too much. I'm not sure. I did on occasion have it not work when I was in, development, but then work fine when I published it. So I think that's pretty much the whole point of this is I want to show you how cool it is, but I also want to show you that it's going to be more work than you think, just to get your head wrapped around each one, but I really like it. So, and these can go, you can make these, I believe you can make these part of Power BI. There's going to be a lot of integration between on-premises reporting services and Power BI. They're working on that. There's going to be a lot of integration between those as well.
What are you doing development in here? Is this Power BI or is this
No.
Visual Studio? Is this...
No. To develop the mobile reports, it's called Mobile Report Publisher. So the way you get it is you just go up to this download link and just click that, download it. So it's really nothing to do with Power BI, except that to see it on your device, it will run inside the Power BI app. I'm not touching Power BI at all to develop. So.
You show how to set this up in the class you done Pluralsight?
Yeah, so my Pluralsight course, I have one module that goes through everything on setting it up. Install what you need to install in SQL, what are the development components. I have you install Report Builder so that you can create the shared data sets. But yeah, I have one module that goes through all of that. Again, it's Enterprise Edition. Make sure you get your service packs and cumulative updates. But
Enterprise Edition would not be able to do it with Developer Edition then?
Developer Edition's fine. Yeah, Developer Edition's going to have everything that Enterprise Edition has, but it is not for production. So other questions? Yes?
In your opinion, would you use Power BI as anchor and then supplement it with SSRS? Would it be the other way around?
Yeah, right. I feel like, and I could be wrong here, I have a feeling that companies that are going to go all Power BI may not care about this, and companies that don't want to do Power BI, they just want to have, the on-premises reports will probably like this, is what I'm thinking. Because I really feel like the Power BI has so much functionality that why mess with this? So I think that customers would go one way or the other, as far as having like the hosted Power BI and the Power BI dashboards. This doesn't seem like, to me, this doesn't seem as good, but I think it's a big step above the reporting service, the traditional reporting services dashboards. So, but I haven't really talked to any customers to ask them, or companies to ask them, but that's kind of my feeling.
Are there things that reporting services does better than Power BI or functionality that you use
Right.
offers that you would choose over? And it seemed like there was in previous versions of reporting services did a couple things really well. It's had their presentation with the parameter selection.
Yes,
And the lines seem to be blurrier now
right.
between the two. But is there still some things that reporting services does?
Does it better?
We are set really well.
I do. I really think just for paginated reports, you don't want to have them out in something like Power BI. So like with Power BI, aren't you going to have a subscription for every person that uses it? Like $10 a month or something like that? Well, maybe you've got people that are not executives that need certain reports to be able to run them every day. It doesn't make sense to have those in Power BI. It makes sense to have it in reporting services. For example, back when I was a DBA, I was at a big law firm and we had a records department, and they had me do tons and tons of different reports. And, it would not have made sense for the people working in the records department to be getting Power BI. Those were not kinds of reports they needed. So I kind of think maybe in a company that wants to have Power BI for their executives, or maybe, people that, maybe the data scientist area, but just for reports, I just need to see a list of all the records that have been checked out for 30 days. Makes sense to have that on reporting services. So I really think it's the right tool for the right job. But, I really was thinking that Microsoft was going to deprecate reporting services at some point because of all of these options, but I'm sure there must not for a while after they've invested so much in it.
I think reporting services is the only place you can schedule an email delivery of a report, or can you do that in Power BI?
Yeah.
You can do that in Power BI, but I think very like hard coded way. In reporting services, you can actually have the subscription. I don't know if that's really hard.
Right. If we're reporting, that's one of the really cool features of reporting services is all those subscriptions, but I haven't. Yeah. So you've got the Power BI. I don't know. Yeah.
I would think a bigger consideration is, you're not going to find companies going full on Power BI right now. Why? Because as soon as they get past level 2, they're going to see that you can't do read-only. There's no way to do read-only. And plus, there's some bad defaults that lets people share with external organizations. But until you have a read-only capability, you can turn it on for some user group. I mean, what is cool about it is you can connect it to an AV user group, or even just a distribution email list instead of doing 35 users that you're paying per month for. So I mean, that part is cool. But I don't want people being able to slice and dice the dashboard to the point where, if they're read-only audience, I want them to see exactly what I want them to see.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want them to show, by filtering, a really bad result.
So yeah, I just think it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. Got a lot of tools to pick from.
Does SQL Server reporting services offer row level security, so that if you created a report and you wanted to distribute it to a bunch of sales reps, they would only see their data with the same report?
I don't know that you could do it with you can send a user ID, I think. Well, you can do it. You can do it in reporting services by, for example, passing in the user ID under the covers. They don't, as a parameter, they don't even see that. You can have, so you could filter that way. So it would be roll your own row level security.
That's
Yeah.
one method. You can do row level security if the database has row level security enabled. You have to ensure you set up verbose double hop, which is its own little nightmare. But once you have that set up properly, you can have row level security, and as long as you're doing impersonate rather than run as service run, then it'll work. And everything will just flow up and down.
So So here's another interesting thing about the mobile reports too, is Kerberos is not supported for the mobile reports if you're publishing them out to the phones. So that's so that's another gotcha, is that if you do normally, enable Kerberos, it's not going to work with the mobile. It'll work with the mobile reports in the web portal, but it's not going to work on the phone and that type of thing. So that's another issue. But so whatever, if you have row level security implemented in the database and it knows who the person is, that should work. Or with traditional, you can pass in the user ID without them even knowing that you did it. If you even had, that's what we used to do, back in the day.
You don't even have to pass that in. It's a built-in parameter, just like date and time is.
Right.
You can just throw it on a page for a report, add user ID.
Right.
People can't escape that. We know who you are.
Yes. I'm sure that's.
You don't have to make your procedure pass it in special unless you want to make it be a group name or something else special.
Other questions? I guess I'm done then, 7:32.
Please fill in your evaluation, and we'll do raffle. And stop the recording.
I will stop recording.
Would you be able to hand me this, or?